morning, friends, and welcome to Friday lectures, talks,
Discussion.
depending on what you think them as. Today, an interesting talk. I have never met our friend, so it'll be very interesting to me and others to listen to what he has to say. Sam, and Sam will be talk was called Meeting the Incorporate, a sense of connection with the natural world and our environments. Sam.
Thank you. Well, in 2022, I was a observer to nature. I wasn't a participant, and this was before I was a Quaker, and I started getting into environmental issues from litter picking, and so I would go out by myself and find out about plants and wildlife, and then that opened up the doors to join in other groups that were local, join in other organizations who had the same idea. And what I found was that just how much nature helped me and helped other people in terms of mental health, in terms of connection to others, in terms of getting people out the house when previously they'd be stuck in there essentially. And so what I found was the evidence for getting out in nature, that your body automatically calms down when you're in nature, almost harkening back to our ancestors. Our body just knows in nature that it's time to calm down. And in recent years, there's been a great an interest in subjects such as river pollution, such as climate change, such as rewilding, which has really come to the forefront, I think, more now than it ever was. People are so concerned about wild swimming, that why can't we go out due to the water companies. And when I became a Quaker, having joined since last year, what I found was that meetings could not just be limited to meeting houses. I think there's a line by George Fox that says that God is not in the temple, but in the hearts of his people. And I know that the early Quakers did have meetings outside. And I think that meeting houses are really important. Of course, they are to the Quaker identity. But I think to have meetings, in woodland, in fields, on beaches, beside lakes and ponds, in ancient woodland, as I'm very lucky to have an area of ancient woodland near me, which has been there since the 1100s. So to have a meeting there to really enjoy the silence, and it really is silence. You could go out there and at 9 o'clock at night and see the stars, and it was the idea to have Quaker meetings outdoors was really inspired by Paul Parker, who I met at an interfaith retreat, who said that he had taken some friends out and had a Quaker meeting at night under the stars. And he said that everyone is having such a great time. I think they were out there for an hour. And at the end, they even said, can we stay a bit longer? And previous to that, I'd had an idea to have Quaker meetings outdoors, but that really put the seed in to really open up Quaker meetings to tying in not just silence, but also environmental concerns. You could have people who may be anxious or don't have the confidence to go to a meeting house. but they could instead go to, as I mentioned, a field or woodland that is, to some people, that setting is much more easier, much more relaxing to be out in the fresh air. I think the Quakers having always had an environmental sort of concern for the climate, and the many friends that write letters and various campaigns. I think that to embrace nature, in such a way to improve our connection with it, I think it could have wide-ranging benefits. As I said, for mental health, for well-being, for connection, and to go out there, to have your meeting, and then walk back from wherever you've just been, or to have tea or coffee, to hear the birds. And I think especially with the studies about silence, that silence is linked to depression, is linked to noise. A noisy world is linked to depression, linked to anxiety, linked to cardiovascular disease. And to create a space for people to go, not in a building, but in the fresh air, where I have a friend who does forest therapy, and she said that there are chemicals within the trees that when you breathe them in, I think it's something that they emit naturally. And when you breathe them in, that they have properties that improve your mood. I think it goes back to sort of Japanese forest therapy. So on the whole, it would be great to have some outdoor Quaker meetings. The weather isn't too bad. It's brightening up a little bit, but it has been quite rainy as of late. So I think this year, I'd love to, as I said, expand and sort of open up Quaker meetings to encompass a range of different locations, even in public areas such as Blaze Castle, College Green, where we're not just out in nature, but we also have a public presence. We could have a board there, say in Quaker meeting, so anyone could come over and join. So the possibilities are endless. You could have it at Weston on the beach on a really nice day, on the sand dune. You could have it anywhere that there's nature. So that's the idea, to have a number of meetings this year, maybe in summer, and really see what we can do and see what the reception is, and see how people react, that they're outdoors. If they like nature already but hadn't been to a Quaker meeting before, they might be more inclined to go to it rather than meeting indoors. So that's the general gist of what I'd like to do. We had an event last year where we went out to see the Perseid meteor shower, and we could see them so clear. Imagine having a Quaker meeting, under a meteor shower, just to get people together, the connection, and have a chat on the way back, and to enjoy silence at the end of the day. So if anyone has any questions, you'll be most welcome.
I've got a feeling I should have heard about this before, and I'm ashamed to say I hadn't. I didn't know about that last year, but I think it sounds really exciting. Has anyone been on to any of these outdoor celebrations? Isn't the right word, is it? Well, it sort of is a celebration, though, isn't it? Hmm. Has anybody else been to one of them? You'll have to describe it yourself in that case. Yeah. So, when in the past, when you did do that, how many people could you actually muster? How many people tended to actually put their feet on the ground to get there.
Well, in terms of outdoor events such as a meteor shower, we would have over 20 people.
That's very, yes, that's, yeah.
So quite a large group. And you had someone who brought along their young son. And I think to maybe to replicate that in a Quaker meeting
Yes.
would be great.
Yeah.
Helen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking of was it Quaker 350 when we did a lot of there were lectures and all sorts of events in Bristol, in central Bristol, and lectures in the Wills building and what have you. But we did do an outdoor meeting on Castle Park,
Yeah.
which was quite big. People are nodding, so I wasn't the only one that was there. I think we had chairs. I think people brought folding chairs, and anybody was welcome. And a few people wandered in. One person was rather the worse for drink, but was a sort of gentle. I don't know whether you'd call it eldering. It was sort of gently dealt with without anybody having to stand up and say, yeah, and it sort of took its time, and the chap wandered off. So and of course camp. The people that go to Quaker camp do a circle round a circle in the morning meeting for worship, and a circle around the campfire in the evening. And those can be lovely. Haven't been a regular attender at camp, but I think I've been to 3 in all over the years. And yeah, I can remember one of them being really, really helpful. The fact that it was outdoors, and the fact that we're in this scout camping field on the edge of a wood. Yeah, it was very helpful with what I was struggling with at that time. So I like it, and I mean I'm thinking there are also outdoor spaces with a bit of shelter. I did a climate choir action the other day, and before we went into town to sing outside the big banks, we did a rehearsal in the bandstand on Castle Park, and that's just a public space that anybody can use if somebody else isn't there already. I don't know whether organising anyway, it's a sort of available. There are sometimes available sheltering places so that a shower or inclement weather needn't be an obstacle. The more wild ones obviously are a little bit different. Worth a recce, like when you do a walk, when you lead a walk, if you've done a recce first and got the lie of the land, it's helpful.
Pardon me. I remember going to Woodbrooke, and they did the occasional outdoor meeting there, which was exceedingly good, because they get lots of green space where you can groups can meet and be there. But anyway, Mark, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks so much for convening this meeting. It's great. And sorry I was a bit late, but I think it's a super topic. And I love the idea of outdoor Quaker meetings. And I'm just thinking we've only been to the Redland meeting so far. And so that we haven't been part of any outdoor meetings yet. But I think it would be a great idea. It makes me wonder about whether any of because Redland doesn't have a very big garden, does it? Whereas some of the other meeting houses in Bristol have bigger gardens, whether they have more opportunities to do it. I certainly know that the children's meeting at Redland, they have used the garden, and they've been outside for sometimes in the summer, for their children's sessions at Redland, which is really super. And we've been 2 or 3 times now to the with a number of people from the Redland group to the Quaker, the community managed woodland, which is near Chepstow, which one member of the Redland meeting is part of that kind of community group. So we've been on a little kind of Quaker visit to that woodland, and then helped with some of the tree management and clearing of the woodland and other sorts of activities. But I think if it were possible to sort of integrate outdoor meetings and meetings in nature more into the regular meeting schedule, I think that'd be brilliant. And it really speaks powerfully to me to the kind of the Quaker connection and interest in the natural environment, and bringing the natural environment into the meetings feels like such a good idea. My last job I worked for DEFRA, Department for the Environment. My last job was actually looking after kind of policy on connecting people with the outdoors and connecting people with nature. And I'm really so aware of the importance of it. And you were saying, Sam, about lots of evidence about the benefits of connecting with nature with in terms of physical health, in terms of mental health and well-being. We're piloting something called green social prescribing, where you're prescribing nature-based activities for people to help tackle mental ill health. And we know that all the evidence shows us that there are certain groups that are much less connected to nature. People from ethnic minorities, for example, people with disabilities who find it more difficult to get into nature. So thinking about what we can do to kind of promote access for them. So I think that kind of connecting with nature and that kind of in very much in the Quaker tradition, and I always come back to the David Attenborough quote about no one will protect what they don't care about, and then will care about what they've never experienced. So that connecting to nature to help people care about the environment and respect the environment is so important. So it's a lovely theme.
Yes.
I am so impressed with these backgrounds that you have all got behind you.
I spent a few minutes just now trying to find out how to change it.
It's wonderful, it's beautiful, and then I want to be on that beach, I have to say, in the palm tree.
It's just right for January.
Absolutely.
My one's Wales. My one's the southern Snowdonia, where
Wow.
I went for a walk in October last year. So it's a bit more murky and misty, but it's North Wales.
Yeah.
That's glorious, though. Glorious background.
In fact, just for a millisecond, I thought you were really there, but I think I would have heard the wind and the rain if you were.
Great.
That's it. I mean, we've already started, haven't we, incorporating the outdoors actually into our sessions. So we're quite ahead with the idea. I didn't used to be able to do it until I got a new laptop. I don't know if it was just my inaptitude, which is perfectly likely, or whether it is just you have to have a more modern piece of kit. I don't know. To get these beautiful pictures and well, and I suppose what you've done, Mark, you must have gone into your photograph collection and taken a photograph, and I can anyone do that?
Yeah, you can just go on to you put your mouse over your image, and there's three little dots on your picture of you, and then you choose. You can choose virtual. There's an option to choose virtual background, and then you'll be able to go and look at if you've got photos on your computer, you can then select one of those photos and choose it as your background.
Right. You see that. I think that's another way of making us more. I don't know, really. It always makes me happy to be by the sea, or in pieces of a country like the one behind you, North Wales. But I also find it refreshing to have a quick look at the photos, and that's that's like a breath of fresh air every time you turn on the computer, which is not to be sniffed at. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm taking us slightly off target. I don't know.
I feel compelled to join in and pick up a background. That's the Eiger.
Yeah.
That's in Switzerland. The Eiger, the Munch, and the Jungfrau. And this hotel is the Palace Hotel in a small town called Muren, quite
area mountains.
And I was there for 6 months, almost exactly 50 years ago, training to teach meditation and learning about meditation and training to teach it. So it combined silence with the mountains. So it was a beautiful time in my life. And I lived up in the north of England for quite some time in Skelmersdale, and I used to go on litter picking walks. People used to go on walks dropping things, and I used to go on walks picking them up, and it got me out in the countryside with the feeling that I didn't get angry that people left litter. I was just grateful that I could make things a little bit better. So yeah, Sam, it's a lovely idea to bring Quakers more in contact with our outer selves as well as our inner selves. We've had a so there's a bit of a patchy history. We had a larger area meeting sustainability group, which broke up, just leaving a smaller group at Central, and that has shifted over to it's changed its remit recently. But I'm still interested to have Quakers be more involved in helping communities be more resilient. And resilience is it's a funny word, but when you look at what the roots of a resilient community are, it is being in touch with each other and being in touch with our environment. And resilience groups form, at least in part, because of the damage we've done to our natural environment. And the only way we're going to put things right is by becoming closer, being more in tune. And silence in nature is as important as activity. It's a beautiful idea, Sam.
Would you like to continue, Sam?
Yeah.
It's just sort of thinking of early Quakerism. It sort of reminds me of when George Fox travelled up Pendle Hill and had his experience there, and that people to this day, from what I've heard, still sort of go up there on. I don't know whether it's the day that he himself went up there. They do a sort of pilgrimage up Pendle Hill. And again, I think that has a link to the outdoors. When you think of Pendle Hill, I think that silence in nature can, in my own experience of it, it can help if you've had a stressful week. It can really rejuvenate you if you just find that time, and it seems like your mind catches up to whatever is troubling you, and then you open up your eyes and you feel much more refreshed. And on a walk at night last year that I did, as we were sort of walking out in the fields, is so far from, you could see lights in the distance, but they're quite far away. That sort of ties into sort of light pollution. Light pollution is tied to mental health as well. And to have a space like that, when you can hear nothing but the wind, that's all you hear when you're out there. It's just this whistling and the odd bird, and how special that place is. When we're confronted so much by notifications, emails, news stories about Trump and other conflicts around the world. I think if you were to always look at that, you'd be in quite a sorry state, and you have to sort of try and do the best you can to look after yourself. And so I think getting people outside, whether they've been to a Quaker meeting or not, silence. Some people might not like it, but I think silence in this society is seen as something that should be filled. Whenever we have silent conversations and no one is talking, we think of that as really awkward. I think it's just being radical. How radical is it that we meet in silence in a meeting house in a really noisy world? And how radical would it be if to really build on that? To have people in the meeting outdoors to take their shoes and socks off, for instance. There's plenty of evidence that there's bacteria in the soil, and when our skin absorbs it, what happens is that the brain gives off a chemical reaction, which is, I believe, is dopamine, the feel-good drug. And they say about the earth that it has an electrical current of sorts, and that when our feet touch soil, that we sort of connect this current. Some people might think it's a load of rubbish. Some people might think it's true in a way. But I felt myself going out on a barefoot walk. As soon as your feet touch the ground, you just feel almost like recharged by the earth. So yeah, it's given the people to try things like that, to really build their own relationship with nature and the outdoors. We shall see how that develops over this coming year. It'd be great to have something in a local nature reserve sort of near me, but again, it could be anywhere. And the hope is that it could then be replicated in different places. I think. Taken.
Yeah, I think that's great, Sam. I think just two thoughts. One is that night walks. I'd love to do a night walk. I've actually want to do a night walk in 2026. It's one of my, not that I've set New Year's resolutions, but it's one of the things I've put down that I would like to do. I listen to I don't know if you listen to Ramblings on Radio 4 ever, which is Sandy Toksvig. Is it Sandy or is it
Claire Balding?
Sorry, Claire Balding, going on walks with people all around the country in national parks and other places. And I listened to one where she went on a night walk with someone who took her on a night walk, and they were just saying how it does change your perspective, as you're saying. You've refocused your senses. You use different senses, and it takes a while for you to adapt and get used to, like 20 minutes or 30 minutes actually, till your eyes adjust and your body adjusts to this new. And we just don't have that, do we? Never in that context in the kind of modern world where when we're outside, it's either daylight or we're under artificial lighting. So I'd like to do that. We could do a Quaker night walk at some point. And the other thing I think I've been really interested in recently is rivers, and inspired by the growing movement on kind of rights of rivers, giving rivers rights by the outcry over pollution in rivers. And reading this writer called Robert McFarland, who I've read 2 or 3 of his books, but he's just written a book about rivers. Is a river alive? Is a theme of his book. Writing and reporting on sort of the growing movement globally to kind of give rivers rights, give nature, part of the broader movement, sort of nature-centric governance, kind of thinking about giving nature having rights. But he writes very powerfully about rivers. And it's interesting looking at some of Bristol's rivers and how they are often very hidden from sight. They're often being kind of canalised, and they've been built over, like the Froome, which runs under the centre of Bristol, which just disappears from sight as it goes under the centre, and the River Trim as well. And I've sent once or twice, I've traced the river, so it's starting at the sort of was the source of the river, and then kind of following the river down, the River Trim down, as it then meets the Avon and discourses into the Avon, and seeing how it changes during the course of the river. But I think that's a lovely way of connecting with nature in a city, is to its rivers, which are often hard to find in big, modern cities because of the way that we've built over them or confine the rivers to their channels.
I think as well with walking at night, there's evidence that said that I think if anyone were to walk at night in a group, maybe not on your own in a nature area, there's been studies that the night, I think the way in which we perceive darkness makes us naturally quite tired and quite sort of almost mellow. So when we get home, we find it much easier to go to sleep, and people walk at night to then go to sleep much better. I think that we can really utilize that day or night, or as the sun is setting. The possibilities are endless, really.
There was a friend of mine who goes to the same meeting as I do, called David Moat, and one day I said, would you like to come for lunch with me? And he came for lunch, and I live in Clifton at the moment, and he said, "How about going for a walk?" And I said, "That's it. Yeah, nice stroll. I don't mind doing that." So we went from a walk from where I am down to the Clifton Bridge, and there is a small wood near there, which we walked around, and then we started to walk back, and it showed me how unfit I was, because I was totally cream crackered when I got back home. But actually, what I'm saying is that there are woods nearby, lots of people, which can be accessed, and they, like me, should do a little more of them. But then again, but may I indulge people with a slight story of when I was a lot younger, because like yourself, Sam, I did a lot of community work as well. And one of the things that I did with a few other people was I took a lot of young people from London's East End who had never been outside, not only had been outside London, but they hadn't been outside their part of London.
Mm-hmm.
So we took them to a place called Hay-on-Wye in Wales, and it's out there, and we when I first got there, and it was started to get dark. I said, because the tents were up and all this, and I said, right, we're all going to lay down on the ground and look up at the sky. And they looked up at the sky, and it was a lot of it amazed them, because there's so much light pollution in London. You don't see the sky, you don't see how beautiful it is, and how breathe, and and that type of thing, and which they found was quite amazing. But when I went back to my tent, laying asleep in the tent, suddenly the tent was nearly taken apart by outside 3 rather large East End lads were standing there looking most confused. And I said, what's going on? And they said, well, there's a strange noise that we keep hearing. And I thought, what? And they said, look, there it goes again. And I looked rather sadly at them, and I said, it's a fox. And they'd never heard this before. Never heard of a fox calling or barking, as it sometimes called. And I said, it's Mr. Fox calling to Mrs. Fox, saying, come over here, let's have fun. And it was, I always remember it as kind of, not near the fox thing, but the actual being out in there. And it changed them completely, because they were kind of bruising, they like that, and lots of girls there as well, who've never been, but they came back as changed people because of the experience they had there.
Yes.
Sorry to monopolize it a bit there, but
no, it's very. I couldn't agree more about the change that it can occur in people, by experience of the natural world, and just being in silence, whether it's out of doors or indeed in a meeting. But it changes you. That's what I've found anyway. You mentioned the fox, and I just cannot resist doing a plug here. Perhaps everybody has now watched a BBC documentary, The Wild London. Um, oh, you should. It's on BBC iPlayer, so what's his name? David Attenborough, who's now close to 100, and he's recorded within London, well, but basically wildlife in London, and it's stunning. It is, the most stunning program. I've watched it several times now, so um, it's only marginally relevant to what we're saying, but I don't know, actually, it feels very relevant to me, but you must watch it and see whether you agree with me or not.
One of the things that was said on that subject was that there's far more foxes per square, whatever, kilometre, acre, whatever, in urban settings than there are in the
Oh,
country.
yes.
So it's quite surprising. I suppose these lads were from a very, very built up area. But I mean, when my grandson was small and came to stay with, and lives in very rural mid Wales, and came to stay, he would never go to sleep until he had seen at least one fox go by in the street outside. And he always did eventually, and when he was quite little, he would sort of run downstairs, I've seen the fox, I've seen the fox. As if wildlife was strange to him, which if you don't mind another tangent, a few minutes earlier you were talking about putting the rivers underground, and this phrase that's always stuck with me. I don't know if anybody who likes poetry will recognise it. It's the final line of a poem by Ursula Fanthorpe, and it goes, "They buried the brisk Froom." And she wrote she wrote about all sorts of things, but was certainly very tuned into plants and the natural world. And there's a lovely poem called "At Frenchay Meeting House," which is where I've got it. I've printed it out somewhere. Maybe I can share it with the group if I can put my hand on it later. But she was I think she was at Gloucester meeting. She died not so many years ago and was a Quaker and wrote some lovely stuff. Very accessible poetry, which is great.
Sorry, a little bit in there. She used to go to Gloucester meeting with her partner, Rosie Bailey.
It would be quite interesting if you could find the reference, Helen. We could attach it to this, when it goes out, so people can have a look. It sounds really good. Thank you.
It's certainly got ivy. It starts with ivy growing down a building. I think the ivy sort of makes its way into the meeting room, if I remember rightly.
And the Froom, I'm not sure everybody knows this, but the Froom goes within yards of Quaker Central Meeting. It goes under Champion Square, right by the big car park for Cabot Circus. So, yeah, and fun when you mentioned the rivers going underground. The Fleet Street in London, which is nowhere near a river, except the Fleet was the river.
Yes.
Yeah. Does it still go under? Does it go under Fleet Street?
Well, a lot of rivers are in concrete courses under the roads these days. Yes, I'm sure there's still a flow under Fleet Street. One could probably look it up, but yeah, I mean the history of these things is all there to be found. The tragedy is that it's a history rather than current living realities, and it's great when rivers can be dug up and brought back to life.
Well, there's a spring directly under Hallfield Meeting House. I don't know that it has a name, but there is actually, if you go down into the basement there, which you don't normally,
Yes.
there's a pump there that has to keep pumping all the time to keep the basement from flooding.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it funny that people. So the River Trim, which rises in Filton Golf Course,
Mm.
it then flows above ground for a short distance, and then it goes underground, under for several hundred meters, under lots of houses, and then merges again and flows down to the Avon. But I find it funny that people living in those houses, and almost all of them, surely will have no awareness that there's a river under their house. It seems an incredible thing. But when they've unearthed rivers, as you say, David, people are really interested. I went to see in Stockport, near Stockport city centre. You can the River Mersey. It flows through Stockport, but it's underground for part of the way. But there's bits which are open where you can peer down. You can see the river down below flowing through the centre, and that connects people with the river, and they know that raises their awareness.
I just had a quick look, and the River Fleet starts where the Hampstead ponds go underground. So the water's exposed in Hampstead and then goes under London. And
I am going to assume that Fleet Street, which we think of as being associated with newspapers, which of course originally were very low class and looked down upon, and probably were situated in quite inexpensive places. So if they were down by the Fleet, it was probably likely to flood, which is probably why they were there, which is why we've now got. It's all right. I'll shut up in a minute. I just find these things fascinating and where it all connects. Yeah, I could never. Sorry, it's just fine. Go.
I think the connection is that when one goes out into nature, we just put our attention goes to that, and these things come lively in our lives. Sam's telling us little stories about what comes to mind when you're out in nature, and I think this is as important for everybody as it is for Quakers. That the opportunity to be in the countryside and to be silent is a really beautiful thing. I'm thinking of my sister, who she says, "Oh, you go to your Quaker meeting," and then she says, "But I just go and spend time in nature." And I think, yeah, you're way ahead of me.
Stuff.
It was something that I read about patients recovering in hospital, that if they were to see greenery outside their window compared to someone who doesn't have greenery, that the people with greenery outside their window are more likely to recover faster.
Doing that, yeah.
Yes, my flat has got it. I got an upstairs flat, which is great because I got a bit of a view, and at the front of the house looks out on other houses, but the back of the house I can see a long way, and there are a lot of trees to look out at, and I always use the front room, which has only got houses to look out at. I use that as the sitting room because it's used with the curtains drawn mainly at night, and it's a pleasant enough room. But in the daytime, you get all this extra light, and it's a really beautiful view, and it really affects how I feel. So the kind of rooms I use in the daytime, it definitely is better if you've got the choice to be looking out at well, I suppose, can you call it land? It's not exactly landscape. You could say it's cityscape, but it's cityscape with trees. So yes, I'm happy with trees personally.
If you look at some of the more different parts of Bristol, there are some of them which have some of the bigger houses or one would class as in quotes the nicer parts, more expensive parts of Bristol. There always seems to be large amounts of trees around, and the trees are quite old as well, isn't it? Which is always seems to me to be a thing which we I think we need to be more thoughtful when building. The build of the city needs to have more, not just housing, but kind of trees and plants and actually parks for children to run around in more than they do have at the moment. And as I would coming from that is if you go down to the dockside and you walk along the kind of as you come from the city into it, there's that kind of very long row of trees, which is part of the art gallery, which is there, the end, the Arnafini.
Yeah.
Down that area is really worth looking at because there's quite a bit. I think David would probably know where, because he usually goes for coffee across the other side of the river, I think. I see him there often.
Yeah.
That's another part of Bristol where you can be quite surprisingly close to different forms of nature is the old the things like the feeder canals. I used to I lived for a while in Barton Hill, and a favourite walk was along. Well, it's a canal that leads into the city centre, which you certainly used to be able to follow. And it has an amazing degree of wildlife. And it was, surrounded by tower blocks, but you could have been a long way away from urbanisation. And I don't know how many feeder canals we've got, but certainly they're quite a haven for wildlife.
The trick with that, I think there's only one feeder canal in Bristol, and the point of it was was when the Victorians or their predecessors, because it's about 200, the so-called floating harbour is where the real River Avon used to go, and it used to rise and fall with the tides. And that made it less accessible as a port, and the Victorian engineers dammed the Avon and cut a bypass, which is the new cut along Coronation Road, and cut the feeder canal to bring water in from higher up in the Severn to keep the floating harbour floating, keep it at a level. And that area, the area by Barton Hill and the feeder canal, is now subject of one of the largest urban redevelopments in Europe, actually, that whole area. And there's much opportunity and much sadness at the same time, because an area that was sort of blue collar working area, there's lots of workshops and things like that in that area, which are all getting knocked down to create mostly housing. And there's an exhibition about the development opening in the next weeks. So, because I live not far from it. So, yes, we have to be, we need to be much more aware in our planning of, all of these things. And sea level rise will affect us. And where I'm sitting right now, if I open up my phone and hit the compass, I notice that my elevation, I'm only 10 meters above sea level. And within probably less than a century, the sea level may have risen that much. And there's a bit of a giveaway in the this new development alongside the Feasers Rate. It's in the Phillips Marsh area. So, think about that. Is that likely to flood when the sea level rises? Oh, yes, it is. So we need to become much more conscious of our relationship with our natural environment and much more caring of it to save ourselves as a species from the damage that we've caused. So it's beautiful that you're raising this topic, Sam.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for giving up the time to join and listen. It's much appreciated. And for I'm not a natural speaker by any means, but it's been great to share, and hopefully later on in the year we might be some more news about it.
Great.
Very much hope so.
Yeah.
Can I be really cheeky? I found the Fanthorpe poem. It's not all that long. Unless Sam has some sort of closing comments, I wonder if I might read it.
No, go on.
It's so much nicer aloud. A sec while my phone refines it. And it's just called Friends Meeting House.
Okay.
When the doors of the house are shut, eyes lidded, mouth closed, nose and ears doing their best to idle, fingers allowed out only on parole, when the lovely holy distractions, safe scaffolding of much-loved formulae have been rubbed away, then the plant begins to grow. It is hard to rear, rare herb of silence through which the word comes. 3 centuries of reticent, meticulous lives have naturalized it on this ground. And the herb is the vine, savage marauder that spreads and climbs unstoppably, filling the house, the people, with massing, insistent shoots that leaf through windows and doors, that rocket through chimneys, till flesh melts into walking forms of green, trained to the wildness of vine, which exacts such difficult witness, whose work is done in hopeless places, prisons, workhouses, in counting houses of respectable merchants, in barracks, collieries, sweatshops, in hovels of driven and desperate men. It begins here, in the ground of silence. I remember at least once hearing that read at Hallfield meeting, I believe by Jean Jones years ago. Yeah, it's such a lovely Quakerly poem.
It's beautiful. Yes. Oh, I really like that.
And would you still like it if attached to send it you? Yeah.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, people enjoy poetry in so many different ways. That way they have the choice. They can listen or they can read. So that would be good, I think.
I don't think we can sort of end it better than that poem.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you
to everyone, and hope you have a good rest of your day, whatever you may be up to.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Sam. Because it's been such an interesting session, and I don't think we would have thought of doing it if it hadn't been for you. So thank you. Well, I'm sure we wouldn't actually.
Very welcome.
And I can describe a problem that the recording angel has. I'm definitely not a recording angel. That thought just came to me. I should be putting this up, and YouTube has a limit to the length of the titles that it allows. And the title for your talk is probably a little bit too long. So I'm wondering if you can suggest a short title that I can use for the YouTube video.
Maybe something like
Doesn't have to be too
Quaker.
short. I got 100 characters, but that has to include your name and Quaker Talks and the date. So you've got about 50 or 60 characters for a title.
Maybe something like changing up Quaker meetings, something like that.
Great.
Quaker meetings in nature.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
great.
like that. Yeah.
Quaker Meetings in Nature it is, by universal acclaim. Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
Let's hope we have lots more of them.
Yes. Yeah. But,
And
let's try and take it forward.
Yeah.
before you all dash off to your daily rounds, what's coming next week? And we have someone who is known to this group, and I think known to more within the area meeting. That is our friend Barney Smith. And he is giving a interesting talk, and its title is "What Made Me Decide to Become a Quaker?" So do come and listen to Barney. It's always worth at least an hour to for such a thing. So go forth, dear friends, and enjoy a pleasant weekend.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Sam.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi.